The Galactic Empire was vast, stretching across thousands of star systems. It had ruled for centuries, crushing any resistance that dared to challenge its authority. No species had ever managed to stand against it. Every planet, every civilization that tried to resist, had been brought to its knees. So when reports of a new species called humans reached the Empire's High Council, no one took them seriously. Grand Admiral Xyros sat in the Empire's war chamber, surrounded by generals, strategists, and intelligence officers. The chamber was dimly lit, the only source of light coming from the massive holographic display in the center of the room. The hologram showed a small blue-green planet, Earth. A tall, thin alien with dark, metallic skin stepped forward. His name was Calvon, an intelligence officer who had been studying the humans for years. He cleared his throat before speaking. "My lords, I must insist that we reconsider our approach to this species," Calvon said, his voice steady but urgent. "The humans are not like the others. They do not submit easily. They do not fight like any species we have encountered before." The room was silent for a moment. Then a deep chuckle echoed from Grand Admiral Xyros. He leaned back in his chair, amusement flickering in his golden eyes. "Do you expect us to believe that a primitive species from a single planet is a threat to us?" Xyros scoffed. "They have barely reached the stars. Their fleets are small. Their technology is stolen from those who came before them. What makes them special?" Calvon took a deep breath. He had expected this reaction. The Empire had always been arrogant, believing itself invincible. But he had seen things. He had studied the battles, and he knew that humans were different. "They are unpredictable," he explained. "They do not follow conventional warfare tactics. They do not retreat when logic says they should. They adapt, they innovate, and they refuse to surrender. Even when they know they are outmatched, they keep fighting. And unlike other species, humans do not just fight to survive. They fight for revenge." Another general, a reptilian creature with sharp claws, sneered. "What are you suggesting? That we should fear them?" Calvon hesitated before answering. "I am suggesting that underestimating them will be our greatest mistake." Xyros sighed, rubbing his temples in frustration. "Enough of this nonsense. The humans are a minor annoyance, nothing more. We have crushed greater enemies than them. Prepare the fleet. We will give them a chance to surrender, and when they refuse, we will erase them from existence." Calvon clenched his fists. He had done his best to warn them. But now, he could only watch as the Empire walked into its greatest disaster. As the fleet began its journey toward Earth, Calvon stared at the hologram of the planet and whispered to himself, "They don't know what's coming." But as the countdown began, something unexpected happened. The human ships had vanished again. "No," Xyros muttered, staring at the screen in disbelief. "Where are they? They can't have." No. A deafening explosion shook the Dominion's wrath to its core. The weapon, the one they had relied on to secure victory, had backfired. It was a direct hit from a human ship. A stealth fighter, barely visible on their sensors, fired precisely at the weak point in the cannon's energy core. The blast tore through the heart of the ship, causing massive damage. "We're losing control," the officer screamed, panic in his voice. Xyros stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing to understand what had just occurred. The humans had anticipated his every move. They had predicted the judgment cannon, and they had countered it. As the chaos spread throughout the Imperial fleet, one thing became painfully clear to Xyros. Earth's inhabitants were far more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. They didn't just fight to survive, they fought to win. And in that moment, the fate of the Empire seemed uncertain. The Dominion's wrath was in flames. Its once proud hull now cracked and bent under the assault from the human fighters. The massive ship, which had been a symbol of the Empire's might, was nothing more than a shattered skeleton in space. Xyros, the once proud admiral, stood at the center of his crumbling command center, fists clenched in anger. His heart raced, and his mind was a storm of confusion. How had it come to this? "Admiral," one of his officers called urgently. "We can't continue like this. Our fleet is in disarray." "The humans." "I know," Cyrus shouted, slamming his hand down on the console in frustration. His usually controlled demeanor was slipping. "We've underestimated them. We've made mistakes, but we can still recover." His voice trembled slightly, betraying the fear rising in him. The human forces had proven themselves time and again, relentless, clever, and unpredictable. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to win in a way the Empire had never experienced. The officer continued, "Sir, their forces are regrouping. They've already begun attacking our secondary fleet, and we're receiving distress signals from multiple ships. We don't have the resources to fight on multiple fronts." Cyrus was silent for a moment, staring at the holographic map before him. The once mighty Imperial fleet was scattered, with ships either destroyed or retreating. His mind churned, looking for a solution, but the reality was undeniable. They were losing. The humans weren't just fighting. They were systematically dismantling the Empire's power. His hand reached for the communicator. "General Zarek, report." The voice of General Zarek came through, strained and anxious. "Admiral, the situation is worse than we feared. We've lost contact with our outermost ships. Their stealth technology is too advanced for us to counter. The human fighters are everywhere. We're on the brink of total collapse." Cyrus gritted his teeth. "Hold your position. Reinforcements are on the way." But as he spoke those words, a deep sense of doubt gnawed at him. There were no reinforcements. Not this time. The Empire's military might, which had been the envy of the galaxy, was crumbling under the relentless assault of a species they had never once considered a threat. On the other side of the battlefield, General Kane was watching the devastation unfold from his own command center deep beneath Earth's surface. The human forces had shown no mercy. Their ships darted in and out of the shadows of space, striking with precision, overwhelming the Empire's defenses. Kane's eyes narrowed as he observed the enemy ships, once so confident, now stumbling in their retreat. "They didn't expect this," Kane muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "The Empire thought they could crush us with brute force. They never understood the power of what we have, the power of our will." Lieutenant Harris stood beside him, her eyes glued to the screens. "Sir, the Empire is falling back. Our forces have them on the run. What are your orders?" Kane stood tall, his voice calm but filled with conviction. "We do not chase them. We do not make their mistakes. We wait for them to make their next move. They will come to us." But that was the question, wasn't it? Could someone like Cyrus truly change? Could someone who had known only power and conquest suddenly embrace something as fragile as peace? "We can't let him escape," Harris continued, her tone serious. "He still poses a threat." Kane thought for a moment. He had always believed in fighting for what was right, in standing up against oppression. But now, after everything, he was forced to confront a new reality. The war was over. The Empire had been vanquished. And yet the galaxy still faced an uncertain future. "We'll bring him in," Kane said firmly. "But we need to hear him out first. He has to answer for what he's done." Back aboard the Dominion's Wrath, Cyrus sat in silence, his gaze lost in the vastness of space. His mind was reeling from everything that had happened. The victory of the humans, the fall of the Empire, his own survival against all odds. But it wasn't just the galaxy that had changed. Cyrus had changed. The man who had once been a ruthless conqueror now found himself questioning everything he had ever known. Was this the end of the Empire? Or was it a chance to rebuild, to start anew? His thoughts were interrupted as the door to the command center opened. The officer who had spoken to him earlier entered, this time followed by a squad of human soldiers, weapons drawn. Cyrus didn't flinch. He didn't fight. He simply stood, looking at the soldiers as they encircled him. Admiral Xyros, the lead soldier, General Kane, spoke, his voice steady but not unkind. "The war is over. The Empire has fallen. You're coming with us." Xyros said nothing at first, his mind working through the words, the situation. He had once ruled, once commanded armies, but now he was at the mercy of those he had sought to destroy. And in that moment, Xyros understood something important, something that the Empire had failed to teach him. There was more to strength than power, more to victory than conquest. The humans had fought for freedom, for survival, not for domination. And in doing so, they had become something greater than just a force to be reckoned with. They had become the future. "I will come with you," Xyros said quietly, his voice steady, "but not as an enemy." Kane nodded. He had expected this. The question was whether Xyros could be trusted, whether he could truly change. But that wasn't a question for today. For now, the galaxy had time to heal. For now, Xyros had a choice. He could live, or he could continue the war. He had chosen life. As the soldiers escorted him off the Dominion's wrath, Xyros looked back at the burning remnants of his fleet. The Empire was gone. But in its place, something new had taken root. Whether the galaxy was ready for that change, only time would tell. But one thing was certain. The humans had proven something that no one could ever deny again. They were unstoppable. "We can't take chances," Kane said, turning to his officers. "Prepare for the worst. If they launch the Abyss Protocol, we need to be ready to disable it." Lieutenant Harris looked up from her console. "Sir, we've intercepted Imperial communications. They've activated the Abyss Protocol. It's a last-ditch weapon capable of destroying entire star systems." Kane's face hardened. This was what he had feared. The Empire, pushed to its limit, was ready to destroy everything rather than lose. The stakes had just become higher than ever before. "We can't let them use it," Kane said. "Prepare all available ships for an immediate assault. Target the central control ship. It's their last hope. If we take that down, the weapon is useless." Xyros stood at the heart of the Dominion's wrath, staring at the cold, glowing interface of the Abyss Protocol. His mind raced with conflicting thoughts. Was this truly the end? Had the Empire's pride, its sense of invincibility, led them down this path of destruction? Xyros knew that if he launched the weapon, there would be no turning back. The galaxy would burn, and so would his own people. But it was too late to stop now. The Empire had lost everything. Their glory was gone. It would be a final act of defiance, a way to show that no one could defeat them, not without paying the price. The countdown began. Xyros' hands hovered over the control panel, trembling as he debated the consequences. His officers were waiting for his command. They had placed all their hopes in this weapon, the Abyss Protocol. But as the countdown ticked lower, something inside Xyros stirred. Doubt, fear, and a flicker of humanity he thought he had lost. On the other side, General Kane watched with increasing urgency. The human forces had broken through the last layers of defense, and the Imperial flagship, the Dominion's wrath, was now within their sights. Kane's voice rang out with authority. "Focus all fire on the flagship. The Abyss Protocol must be disabled before it's too late." The human ships shifted into formation, firing in coordinated bursts, but Xyros' flagship fought back with unexpected resilience. Each shot from the Dominion's wrath felt like a punch to the gut, pushing the human forces further back. The stakes had never been higher, and time was running out. Kane's eyes scanned the battlefield, calculating their next move. "Harris, can you get us a direct line to their core systems?" "We're in position, sir," Harris replied. "I'll try to breach their defenses." Kane didn't hesitate. "Do it." With a surge of power, Harris activated a transmission protocol, sending a virus through the Imperial systems. Their shields flickered, and Kane saw an opening. "Now, all units, fire." Human weapons blazed toward the heart of the Dominion's wrath. The Imperial flagship groaned as its systems began to falter, but just as victory seemed within reach, Xyros's voice came through the communications channel. "You think you've won," Xyros said, his voice cold and filled with a strange calm. "I won't let you take this galaxy without consequences." The countdown reached its final seconds, and Kane knew this was it. The humans had only moments to stop the weapon. The galaxy's future hung by a thread. And then, the unexpected happened. Just as the countdown was about to end, Xyros's hands faltered. His final command never came. Instead, the weapon deactivated. In that split second of hesitation, the Abyss Protocol was stopped. Xyros's voice was full of disbelief. I couldn't do it." Kane's heart pounded in his chest. He had no idea why Xyros had stopped the countdown, but it didn't matter. The humans had won. "We did it," Kane muttered under his breath, looking out into the stars. But even as the battle seemed to reach its end, the echoes of that final moment, the moment Xyros chose humanity over destruction, lingered in the depths of the galaxy. The battle was over, but the cost of victory would be felt for generations. The human race had proven it could fight against the galaxy's most powerful empire and win. But more than that, they had shown something even more powerful: the ability to stand tall, to choose life and peace over vengeance and destruction. The Empire had underestimated them. They had underestimated humanity. The war had begun. Grand Admiral Xyros stood on the bridge of the Dominion's wrath, his face dark with frustration. The battle was not going as planned. The humans should have been crushed within minutes. Instead, they were fighting back with a level of skill and precision that defied all logic. "Status report," he barked. An officer, clearly shaken, turned to him. "Sir, we have lost 7 warships. Human forces are targeting our weak points with extreme accuracy." Xyros narrowed his eyes. "That's impossible. How are they predicting our movements?" The officer hesitated, then whispered, "We don't know, sir." Xyros clenched his fists. He had never faced a species that could fight like this. The Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds, crushed rebellions, and destroyed civilizations. Yet here was a single planet, standing against an armada and winning battles. He turned back to the screen, watching the battle unfold. The humans' warships were smaller but incredibly fast. They dodged Imperial fire with unnatural precision, slipping through defenses like shadows. They weren't attacking like a desperate dying species. They were hunting. On Earth, General David Kane stood in an underground command center, watching the battle play out on a massive holographic display. His officers worked quickly, relaying commands to human warships and planetary defenses. A younger officer, Lieutenant Harris, turned to him. "Sir, the enemy fleet is shifting formation. They're adapting." Kane nodded. "Good. So are we." The humans had been preparing for this moment for years. Ever since the first Imperial scout ships appeared in their system, Earth's best minds had been working on strategies. They knew the Empire would attack eventually. They had studied enemy tactics, built advanced weapons, and trained their forces in ways no alien could expect. Now, it was time to show the galaxy what humans could do. "Deploy the Predators," Kane ordered. Harris's eyes widened. "Sir, are you sure?" Kane's expression remained cold. "Do it." Moments later, hidden hangars beneath the Earth's surface opened. From deep underground, a new kind of warship emerged, smaller than the Imperial cruisers, but sleeker, deadlier. These were Predator-class fighters, equipped with stealth technology and AI-assisted targeting systems. Within seconds, they vanished from enemy sensors. On board the Dominion's Wrath, alarms blared. "Admiral, we have unidentified ships approaching." Xyros frowned. "Where? I don't see anything on our scanners." "That's the problem, sir," the officer said in a shaky voice. "They're invisible to our systems." Before Xyros could respond, explosions erupted across the battlefield. One by one, Imperial ships were struck by unseen forces. Their shields failed. Their hulls shattered. Panic spread among the Imperial fleet. Their ghosts. A pilot's voice screamed over the comms before his ship exploded. Cyrus gritted his teeth. The humans had technology he had never seen before. They were using stealth in open combat, striking like assassins in the dark. He had underestimated them. The entire empire had underestimated them. And now, they were paying the price. The Dominion's wrath was a wreck. Its once mighty hull now showed signs of severe damage, with lights flickering and systems failing. But within its heart, a single figure stood, motionless and still. A man who had once ruled an empire, but had now, perhaps for the first time, confronted the very essence of what it meant to lead. Cyrus stood before the shattered console of the Abyss Protocol, his fingers trembling over the controls, feeling the weight of his choices pressing down on him. He had been the one to issue orders that led to the deaths of countless lives, the one who believed in the supremacy of the Galactic Empire. Yet, as the countdown had reached its final seconds, he had hesitated. His decision to stop the Abyss Protocol wasn't born out of weakness. It was born out of something far more profound. He had recognized that destruction, no matter how justified in his mind, would not bring him peace. It would not bring his people peace. The galaxy had already suffered enough. A soft voice broke through the silence. It was a quiet whisper, a reminder of what was still at stake. Admiral Cyrus, the Empire is gone. Cyrus's gaze lifted to meet the young officer standing at the doorway of the command center. She was one of the few survivors from the bridge crew, her face pale, eyes wide with fear and awe. But it wasn't fear of death that held her in place. It was the weight of the realization that their emperor, the symbol of power and authority, had failed. And now, the galaxy was watching. Cyrus's voice cracked as he spoke. Yes, it is. We lost. We've lost everything. The officer's expression softened. But you stopped it. You stopped the destruction. You gave us a chance. Cyrus exhaled sharply, staring at the cracked screen before him. A chance. To do what? To rebuild an empire that no longer exists. To watch as the last of us are hunted down like animals. For the first time, Cyrus felt the weight of his actions. Not just the wars he'd started, but the consequences of his refusal to listen, to understand. The decision to stop the Abyss Protocol had been the first real act of mercy he had shown in years. And yet, it felt so small, so insignificant compared to the destruction he had already wrought. On the other side of the galaxy, the human forces were regrouping. General Kane stood in his command center, overseeing the final stages of the conflict. His mind raced with the events of the past hours. The humans had won. The Galactic Empire, one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy, had fallen. But Kane's mind was not focused on the victory. It was on Cyrus. We have him, Harris, the communications officer said. The Imperial flagship is still intact. The Abyss Protocol is disabled. Cyrus is alive. Kane's jaw tightened. I know. I just don't know what to do with him. The weight of the decision was heavy. Cyrus was not just an enemy commander. He had been the embodiment of the Empire's power, its ideology. He was a symbol of everything the humans had fought against. But now he was a broken man. A man who had seen the folly of his ways. He has made his choice, Kane muttered. He chose mercy. He chose life. Cyrus stood at the heart of the Dominion's wrath, watching as his flagship continued to burn. His eyes darted between the damaged systems on his console and the reports coming in from the scattered fleet. The humans were relentless. They didn't tire. They didn't hesitate. They didn't make mistakes. Admiral. An officer called out again. We've detected a large group of human ships approaching. They're in position. They're preparing for another assault. Damn it. Cyrus muttered, slamming his fist against the table. We've already given them everything we have. What more can we do? At that moment, his eyes fell upon a small report that had just come through. A data transmission from one of the Imperial ships that had escaped the previous battle. The report described something that made Tyros freeze in place. It was a warning, a final, desperate plea from the surviving crew. They had witnessed firsthand the human resolve. They spoke of the human fighters as they saw them not only fight back with determination, but fight for each other. It was the unity and spirit of the humans that seemed to fuel their victories, something that was foreign to the Empire. The humans fought for more than survival. They fought for the people they loved, for their families, for their homes. Zyros's mind raced. Could it be true? Was this why the humans were so formidable? It wasn't just their technology, their tactics, or their skill. It was their heart. They fought for more than themselves, and that gave them a strength the Empire could never comprehend. Kane's forces continued to move with precision, taking down one Imperial warship after another. The Empire was losing power, and soon they would be out of options. Kane knew that, though they had the upper hand, this wasn't the end of the fight. The Empire was desperate. Zyros would not allow such a devastating defeat without a final, catastrophic blow. It was only a matter of time before they tried something extreme, something that could shift the balance of the war. But for now, Kane knew they had the advantage. The Empire had underestimated humanity's strength. They had underestimated the power of the human spirit. "This is it," Kane said quietly, staring at the battle unfolding in space. "We are no longer the underdogs. We are the force to be reckoned with." The battlefield now stretched before both sides, a vast expanse of stars and debris, where the once proud fleet of the Galactic Empire had faltered. In the vastness of space, the human fighters moved with precise coordination, their numbers overwhelming. The Empire's last-ditch efforts to reorganize had failed. Zyros, once a towering figure of authority, now found himself at the mercy of the same forces that had crushed the mightiest empires before him. "Admiral," came the voice of an officer, sounding frail over the communication channel. "We've lost contact with the remaining fleets. The humans are closing in on the last of our strongholds." Cyros's eyes were hollow, his mind slowly coming to terms with the inevitable. The humans had broken the back of the Empire. Their fighters, so small in size, but with an uncanny ability to adapt and innovate, had turned the tide of the war in their favor. There was no escaping it now. "We're cornered," Cyros whispered. "The only thing left is to fight until the end." He stared at the final map of the Empire's territories. There were no more reinforcements. The human forces had wiped out every reserve, every last military stronghold. They had taken down the Empire's weapons one by one, outsmarting every strategy. But still, Zyros held a small sliver of hope. Perhaps there was a way to turn the tide. A sudden alarm rang in the command center. Zyros straightened up, suddenly alert. "What is it?" "It's them, sir," came the reply. "The humans. They're preparing for the final assault." Cyros's heart raced. He had prepared for this moment. He knew that the humans would not stop until they had destroyed everything the Empire had built. But what they didn't know was that Zyros still held a deadly card in his hand, a weapon capable of eradicating an entire star system. The Empire had kept it as a last resort, knowing that their enemies would do everything to avoid its use. "Activate the Ibis Protocol," Zyros ordered coldly. "We may be beaten, but we will take the galaxy down with us." Back at the human command center, General Kane stood in the center of a holographic display, his eyes narrowing as he watched the Imperial fleet's final movements. He could sense that something was about to shift in the Empire's strategy. The Empire had never given up without a fight, and now they were cornered. Kane knew they would resort to something desperate. The tides of the battle had completely shifted. No longer were the humans cowering in fear. No longer were they the victims of a superior ancient force. Now, they were the hunters, and the Empire, the great and powerful Empire, was the prey. Admiral Zyros paced back and forth in his command center, his fingers clenched into fists. The Dominion's wrath had taken significant damage. Most of the fleet was disorganized, and the once proud Imperial ships were scattering, their formations in complete disarray. "Report." Cyrus snapped, his voice dangerously low. The officer at the communications desk swallowed nervously. "Sir, the human ships are far more maneuverable than we anticipated. They're attacking from every direction. Their stealth technology is rendering our defenses useless. Shut down their invisibility." Cyrus ordered. "We've faced stealth before. We know how to deal with it." "We're trying, sir, but their new systems are bypassing our sensors. We can't detect them properly. They're too fast." Cyrus slammed his fist onto the console. His mind raced with fury and confusion. They should have been victorious by now. Earth should have been a footnote in the Empire's history, but instead, the human forces were turning the tables on them, causing confusion and panic in their ranks. "This can't be happening," Cyrus muttered, his eyes flashing with anger. "They are nothing. Nothing compared to the strength of the Empire. Why do they fight like this?" Meanwhile, General Kane watched the battle unfold from his command center deep beneath the surface of Earth. The air was thick with tension, but Kane remained calm. The Empire had underestimated them, and now they would pay the price. On the large holographic screen in front of him, he saw the human ships, small and swift, move like predators stalking their prey. Each human fighter was equipped with advanced stealth systems, making them nearly invisible on Imperial sensors. But it wasn't just their technology that made them formidable. It was their way of thinking, their creativity, their unpredictability. Lieutenant Harris stood at Kane's side, her eyes glued to the screen. "Sir, we've destroyed at least half of their fleet. Their flagship Dominion's Wrath is heavily damaged, but they're retreating. What should we do next?" Kane didn't answer right away. His gaze shifted to the hologram of the Empire's remaining ships. Despite the heavy losses, the Empire wasn't going to give up. Not easily. There were still countless warships, enough to strike fear into any enemy. "Get the rest of our forces into position," Kane ordered. "But don't chase them. Let them think they're escaping. We need them to come to us." Harris raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure that's the best approach, sir?" "Unsure," Kane replied, his tone icy. "The more they chase us, the more they waste their resources. Eventually, they'll make a mistake, and when they do, we'll make them regret it." Back in the heat of battle, Admiral Cyrus glared at the data streaming across his console. There were fewer ships on his screen now. The humans were picking them off one by one, making it harder to maintain control. The humans weren't just fighting. They were waging a psychological war, leaving the Empire commanders second-guessing their every move. It was a methodical, relentless assault. "Admiral," an officer shouted, pointing at the screen, "we've detected human ships moving toward the weak points in our defense grid." Cyrus' heart raced. "Damn them. How are they so quick? They're moving faster than we can react." With every passing minute, his frustration mounted. The Empire's military might, built over centuries, was crumbling under the onslaught of a species that had no business challenging them. How could this be? "It's time we show them what real power looks like," Cyrus snarled. "Activate the Judgment Cannon. We'll burn their ships from existence." The Judgment Cannon was the most destructive weapon in the Imperial arsenal, capable of obliterating entire fleets with a single shot. If it could be fired, it would turn the tide of the battle. There was no way the human ships could survive such firepower. "Target locked," the weapons officer reported. "Firing in 3, 2. The Imperial fleet moved through the void like a storm of steel and fire. Hundreds of warships, each capable of reducing entire planets to dust, surged toward Earth. The Empire had done this many times before. It was a familiar routine. Arrive, demand surrender, and if resistance was shown, eliminate all who opposed them. Grand Admiral Cyrus stood on the bridge of the Dominion's Wrath, the largest warship in the fleet. Its hull was made of reinforced adamantite, its weapons powerful enough to obliterate moons. Tyros was confident. No species had ever withstood an Imperial invasion. A holographic display flickered in front of him, showing Earth in full detail. The blue planet seemed fragile, almost pathetic, compared to the might of the Empire. "Open a transmission," Tyros commanded. The communications officer nodded and sent a wide-range broadcast to the humans. The message was simple. "This is Grand Admiral Tyros of the Galactic Empire. Your planet is now under Imperial rule. Surrender immediately, and you will be spared. Resist, and your entire species will be eradicated." For several minutes, there was silence. Then the humans responded. The image of a human appeared on the holographic screen. He was an older man, dressed in a simple military uniform. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp. He introduced himself as General David Kane, commander of Earth's defense forces. His voice was calm as he spoke. "Grand Admiral Tyros, you are making a mistake." Tyros smirked. "The only mistake would be allowing you to waste my time. Surrender, General Kane. I will not ask again." The human smiled, but it was not a smile of fear. It was something else, something that made Tyros feel an unfamiliar sensation in his chest. Was it unease? "We know what happens to those who surrender to the Empire," Kane said. "You enslave them. You strip their worlds bare and erase their history. We will not kneel. If you want Earth, come and take it." Tyros clenched his jaw. "So be it." He turned to his officers. "Begin the bombardment." The fleet's weapons powered up, and massive energy cannons pointed toward Earth. The attack was simple: destroy their communication hubs, cripple their military infrastructure, and force them into submission. But then, something unexpected happened. As the first wave of energy blasts shot toward Earth, the humans activated their planetary defenses. Gigantic cannons hidden beneath the ocean floors and deep within mountains emerged and fired back. Energy shields, more advanced than the Empire expected, absorbed the first wave of attacks. Then, a fleet of human warships rose from the planet's surface. They were smaller than the Imperial vessels, but they moved fast. Before Tyros could process what was happening, human ships were weaving through the Imperial formation, striking weak points with terrifying accuracy. An explosion rocked the Dominion's wrath. Tyros turned sharply to his officers. "What was that?" A lieutenant's voice trembled. "Sir, the humans hit us." Tyros growled. "Impossible. Their technology is inferior." But it wasn't. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were counterattacking. Their ships weren't the sluggish, primitive crafts the Empire had expected. They were sleek, maneuverable, and heavily armed. Tyros watched in shock as two Imperial warships exploded, their hulls torn apart by precise human strikes. The humans were not just fighting for survival. They were hunting the invaders. And for the first time in centuries, the Galactic Empire felt fear.